אוקיי.
אתם צריכים תרגום או אין לכם בעיה? תגידו, אז נעשה מדי פעם הפסקה. בסדר? אוקיי.
Good evening to everybody. First of all, I would like to make some thanks. To thank the Dehaan Center for this conference. In fact, I'm for the second time in the Bar-Ilan University talking about the Jewish past of Macedonia, about my Bittula-Monestir, and I'm talking about the project. So I'm thanking Bar-Ilan University also. Then I have to say thanks to the non-profit organization here from Israel called Heritage of the Jewish Communities of Monestir. They were so kind to pay the ticket. I'm saying thank you to Dr. Rachel-Levy-Drummer from Rachel-Sheli, because she is keeping my room in her home always neat, and I can come anytime. That's why I'm saying to all of my friends and acquaintances here from Israel that I can see many of these faces here. Thank you for inviting me at your homes, but you know I already do have a home in Israel. So finally, I would like to say a big thank you to a very good cooperator of mine, His Excellency Ambassador for Israel to Macedonia, Dehaan. For you, he is your co-citizen and a head of the diplomatic department of Balkans. But for me, he is an entire Israel as official policy. And our cooperation in the last, well, we are together for 3 years, is bringing him closer and closer to the position to say that he is my personal friend. Ambassador, good job. Okay, regardless that I was inhabited because I couldn't understand anything you were saying, just the pictures and some words. I understood what Irit was thinking. There is a difference in the way of seeing things and how big that difference is. I'm seeing that in the eyes of the people that are coming to visit Bitola, and when they're coming to see the cemetery or speak with me, I can see the question, why? So I will not answer to that question. It's everybody will come up with its own conclusion. I want to tell you, before explaining the project, something that is new for me, because it's a contemplation during the last 3 years through working in this project, what happened after. How the people that lived in Bitola, that are living in Macedonia, in 75 years since the Holocaust, experienced the past and what's going on today. And by answering that question, I'm going to give you the answer that I came to for myself, that the biggest and best result we've made till now is between the 2 years of many people. Now, in front of you is Monestir Without Jews. That's the name of a book originally written in Ladino. It's Monastir Sin Judos. It was Jamila Kolonomos, born in Bitola, partisan, a leader of the Jewish community of Macedonia for decades, author, friend of Jenny Label, a born leader, a person that I was happy to meet her some 25 years ago with the help of Shelley then again. She came home after fighting the Nazis for 3 years, together with some 38 members of the resistance that were Jews from Bitola. They didn't make it all. 17 died during the war. The last one was Estrella Ovadia, and then she became a national hero of Yugoslavia. And some other young people came from Albania. They escaped there, and they come back to the town. Some came back from Bulgaria. They were studying in Bulgaria, and because they were studying in Bulgaria, they were not deported. And 3 came because they were saved from Auschwitz. One of them was Gita Calderon, and her family is here. So I want you to see the picture in the end of 1944. The German left, the Bulgarian left, and the partisan came to rule. But it was not just a victory. It was a huge change in the entire community. First of all, because they were bringing an ideas of communism, of socialism. And they were not very kind with everybody who was so-called bourgeois. Then, this was the first time after thousands of years that the Macedonian people get the right to have their own state and name it by their own name. In that time of poverty and big changes, nobody was talking and speaking about where the Jews of Bitola and Macedonia were deported, where they are they going to come back? And those that came home, counting them on fingers, they had more important problems. They had to eat, there was no work. They had to sleep because their homes were gone. Only a week after the deportation, the local Bulgarian officer gave the command that every value in the homes should be sold. Of course, it took them a week because first they took what they thought that it's valuable for them. Then, with the coming of the partisans, many of the houses became homes of people that were given to whom these places were given to live with. So you're coming to your neighborhood, and there is no Ladino, there is nobody. You're hearing some names, some voices that you don't know, because many of the people that came to Bitola after the war were coming from the villages. They were not the neighbors. Then in the market, with the change from one system to another, all the stores were nationalized. And even those from the former Jewish families that have their businesses here, like the Kolonomos, like the Chelebon, they were not Jews, they were the capitalists. So I can say that in that period, that small, very small group of Jews that came back to Bitola didn't felt welcome. For the first time after 5 centuries, they were not welcome. And there was a pain of recalling to themselves that they don't know where their families are. It took less than a year that they understood the bitter story that there was Treblinka. Most of them went to Skopje, and soon 1948 came. So a new dream was in front of them, and a lot of them came here to Israel, and they are part of the former Jewish, Yugoslavian Jews present here. I could hear from the music all the sounds and rhythms of the Balkans. And there was one family that came to Bitola for the first time. That was Dr. Haim Abravanel, brought from Skopje to work here. So the old Bitola families transferred their love for their former neighbors to that family. And they were working and fighting together for the new society, for the new values, for the growth of the town and the country. It took them 15 years before the day they could say, okay, now we developed a system, a society, and now we can recall. In 1957, the initiative was given, and in 1958, one lady, sculptor and architect from Bitola, created the monument of the deported Jews. In 1958, that monument was promoted on the place where, I was traveling more than everybody else to come here, so I will steal 5 minutes more. If I'm boring you, okay, I'm sorry, I want to pass the message here. Only 15 years after the deportation, the memory was legitimate, but it was about the limb that was taken away. It was about the Holocaust. It was about the fascists and the Second World War. It was not about the coexistence and the influence of the Jewish community that in Bitola worked and lived for 5 centuries. 2 years after the first commemoration in front of the monument, and many of you have been there to see it, the town of Bitola and the Association of Jewish Communities of Yugoslavia made the first attempt to save the cemetery. Only the cemetery was not used as the homes and all the other real estates in the new life. The cemetery was a place that was abandoned and scary. And they said, okay, we shall transform it into a memorial park. So the idea of the memorial park is not new. It's from 1961, when the city for the first time decided that they are willing to do something for the past without having tangible effects to their everyday life. There were no Jews in the town, but Dr. Chaim Abravanel and his wife. And then in 1963, 2 years later, he was forced to leave the country, and the cemetery remained abandoned. But the memory of the Jews of Bitola that were victims of the Holocaust remained every year because of the tradition to come to commemorate, and many, many generations of pupils were coming and listening to the story. I am one of this generation. I was lucky that I had good grandfathers and grandmothers that were telling me the story of their life. That was surplus for me. But the memory, the collective memory, was kept because of the tragedy of the Holocaust. Once a year, and in the kindergarten that had the name of the national hero Estrella Ovadia Mara, every generation was learning the personal story. And this story is going like this until 1992. So we are talking about the next, how many years? 58, 35, 6 years. For 35, 6 years, all the properties of the Jews of Bitola were suffering the same destiny as the properties of the other families that were taken, nationalized as common ownership. So if the business was going well, that the property was going well. But if not, nobody was taking care. In 1992, the country get it into another big transformation. Now we became a sovereign, independent republic because Yugoslavia fell apart. And we were in a process of transition between the socialistic values of common ownership of everything into the capitalistic and private entrepreneurship. And of course, when the changes are big, people are looking ahead, not back. So the first thing that we learned was that our road is toward the EU and NATO, and that we should forget everything about the socialistic period, even the good things of commemorating and apprising the bitter moments of history. And in less than 7 years, the cemetery was abandoned by in fact, these two rooms that are in the entrance of the cemetery, they were a warehouse of one socialistic company that was abandoned immediately in these years. The doors were open, and soon the rain was starting to rain inside, and it would become a total ruin. In 1997, the Jewish community, the small Jewish community of 83 people registered in Skopje, started the initiative to commemorate 500 years from the date when the cemetery was founded. Because on the gate you will see that in 1497 this plot was bought and the cemetery was founded. And the local people found out, those that were commemorating their friends from before the war, that the municipality is planning to remove the cemetery and make an urban settlement. And they say no. A lawyer, an engineer, teacher, professor in the university, the director of the museum, 15 of them, 5 of them were the core, and they start what we are saying, what we are calling recalling the past by action. In 3 years, they collect funds with the help of the American Association for Preserving American Heritage Abroad, and the museum in Bitola, and the Jewish community, and the gate and the fence was saved. The plans for developing the memorial park from 1961 couldn't be accomplished because in 3 years in our country something else happened. It was positive, but it took the attention from what was going on at the cemetery to one wider and broader cause. In 2000, the year 2000, an initiative started by the Jewish community and many others that the state of Macedonia should retrieve to the Jewish community all the properties that belonged to the people victims of Treblinka. So the idea of the Fund of Holocaust was born. And by that, the attention was taken away from Bitola with the idea that later, when we collect the money, we'll do what we're going to do. It was, well, again 20 years ago. Nothing happened. The cemetery, the gate was saved, but the cemetery, nobody worked at it until 3 years ago. And we start with the idea how to do it. We came here to Bar-Ilan. We were talking after Orit's first pilot project at the small part of the cemetery. Matti was talking, Matti Grünberg here, about the spiritual part and the inspiration that this cemetery is bringing. And Dan Norian was trying to bring to Macedonia as many people as he can. So in January 2016, a teacher for the Holocaust, Professor Lea Chaki, came to Bitola, to whole Macedonia, but especially for Bitola, I want to say the experience. And she came to my high school, speaking to the best history students. And I was shocked. They knew everything about Hitler, about Germany, about the Holocaust, about Poland, about the camps, but they were not aware about the Jewish past of Bitola. They knew some vague number about Macedonia and nothing else. 2 years later, I can proudly say, regardless what will happen, if we will succeed this time and make that cemetery to be a new landmark, we open the eyes of the third generation, younger than me, a generation that is coming, and they are aware. Here in Israel, those who came from Germany to work with us, and by helping to learn about reconciliation, and in Bitola. And new projects are getting every day as ideas from different points of the audience that is meeting the project. That is what I want to pass to you. This is not a project about keeping the memory. It is a project about using the memory and making it alive. That's why we do find ourselves committed to it. And now, because I have the last 5 minutes, I'm going to show what is our plan. Park of the Living. It is very difficult to make an extraordinary landmark in nowadays. They are all historical. Somebody has already done something. So we want to make a new extraordinary landmark for the entire Balkans, not just Bitola, by using art, all the shapes of art. And we claim for this project because of this phrase of Joan Didion. A place belongs forever to whoever claims it hardest, remembers it most obsessively, wrenches it from itself, shapes it, renders it, loves it so ridiculously that he or she remakes it on his or her own image. And we are a big group of different people, different ethnicities, Jews and non-Jews, and we are claiming this place. You already heard that there are no more Jews. You know that the Holocaust changed the picture, and you can hear the silent voice of the abandoned cemetery even today here. Our mission is very simple, to make a big partnership, so this time the initiative will survive and will become sustainable. Our mission is not just to preserve the site. It is number one, but not just that. Also, we want to make that commemorative park, and for that, we want to transform the words from home of the living to park of the living. But that park should ultimately integrate the preserved grave sites. There was a reaction between us as partnership, people that are members of the Jewish community of Macedonia. They were quite afraid that by doing a park, maybe we shall forget that it is a cemetery. No, it will not happen. The Park of the Living is dedicated to life, but with the witnessing of what we have there. That's why what Orit was talking about, the technicalities of preserving the exposed graves, is very important. Because now we are taking the responsibility for what we have done. We have to take care for what we exposed. And for doing that, you know what you have to do. You have to find funds, you have to find people, and you have to create the truthful messages so people will hear, not just with their ears, but also with their hearts, what are you talking about. Matti Grunberg gave us a lot during this period by not just by creating the sculptures I'm going to talk soon, but sharing his artistic feeling, how he feels when he's coming and seeing the place. And he says that the place, cemeteries, are giving us the feeling of the universal transiency of all life. Lives are passing, so do something now. That's the message that we are doing. We are passing with this project, and our eyes are turned to the future. I shall pass this, the main data. I can speak for hours about the life between the communities in Bitola and how it influenced us. And now we are replicating that through this project. We want to address generally the Jewry in the world about the historic and scientific enlightenment of the Sephardic past and tradition. And university is a good place for that, so linguistically or archaeologically on different aspects, we are challenging them to come and see and take active part. We also want to address Balkan people. We are influencing the bilateral relations between Macedonia and Israel in many ways. After this meeting, I can talk, or Dan Orian can answer on this question. But for me, Bitola and Monastirlis are the very core of this Kagan plan. First, the citizens of Bitola today are reviving the cosmopolitan city of spirit of their town just by hosting people that are coming and visiting. And Monastirlis, this year I had 10 families that made their own reunion from all sides of the world in Bitola. Sarale started first in March, and then they are continuing and continuing. These are my warranties as a bank that this project will not be just a story about a cemetery. We would like to use science and art and technology, and Tahal show us how young people can do that if it is offered to them to do it. I would like to see some apps that will sing you lullabies while you are visiting the graves. I would like some apps that will take you from the cemetery to the synagogue of Monastiris in Jerusalem. That's the way how we would like to educate people, and by educating to come to the very surviving of the idea of the park of the living. The very park is expansive ambition. The position of the cemetery is at the entrance of Bitola. It looks like a big theater, and you cannot hide the ugliness in this moment and the beauty soon, I hope. So this is the road to Skopje. On the other side to south you are going to Greece. It is easy to come, and when you're going to come, you will see that tall, sizable hill that encloses the cemetery and the gate, and you will understand that because of the difference in the height, there is an erosion that for a long time caused many of the gravestones to slip down. These are the dimensions, and the first analysis where we have graves, and after that the exposure showed us that we have more than 40% of these 42 hectares that can be used for planting, and by planting to give beauty to the entire space. I will not speak about planting, I will speak about technicalities in the design. The gate and the story about the gate is connected to the maintenance. If you maintain it, we shall have a good place for future visits and explanations. But visitors are coming, 2,000 to 6,000 every year without any marketing, and they are getting informed. They are walking through the cemetery. One of the paths was the path where you saw my picture. We call that a Jerusalem path because it goes alongside the fence. And the last year, thanks to the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and the Ministry of Jerusalem, we have traced this path. Hopefully soon we shall put some pavement on the top and some nice roses on the side, because roses are something that we would like to offer to people with special needs to do at the cemetery and feel involved in the process. I'm finishing. The central path is something that we have developed through, you can see the pictures. We are trying to climb the hill like this, to stop from a point to a point, and when you're going to come to the top, to experience the whole story we want to tell you. This entire path looks like a branch, and it is a branch of humanity's lineage. 3 points here are central. This one and this one are occupied by the art of mat. I'm finishing. And the other 15 platforms and 3 shelters that are in my mind and in the mind of the architects and the groups that is working there are not scientific enough. And I will invite you to imagine with us together what we can do with 18 places of giving life. Thank you.